From the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina, this is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, presented by A Cloud Guru, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from the massive studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Brian, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I think we're 3 in a row now, so we're on a streak, which is good. Things are good, man. The weather's getting better, and everybody's kids are getting out of school here soon. But things are good. It's the industry's moving crazy fast. We're done with trade show season for the spring and getting ready for all the things that happen in the summer.
Yeah, and so for today's guest, we're welcoming back to the show one of the originals. So the first time our guest was on the first show was actually show 15. So that's way back when. And so Peder Ulander, VP of Marketing for Network and Security at VMware. How you doing, Peter?
I'm doing all right. I feel like, I'm the OG, right? I didn't realize it was 15.
Yeah, you were on 15, buddy. So here's the thing.
That was awesome.
You were on 15, and then you were on 100, and you coughed through both of them. So we put you in timeout, man, until 349.
Well, wow, 349. You guys have grown. That's awesome. I'll try not to cough this time. It's taken a while, but I think I'm finally over it.
Well, good. So you were once the most interesting man in cloud. So what are you doing now, man?
Yeah, so I joined VMware, I'd have to say maybe a little under a year ago, with the sole purpose of helping them basically raise the story around networking. And, in many ways, it's pretty much aligned to a lot of the things we learned in cloud, which is as applications become more distributed, as businesses are moving out of the data center, things become more fluid, things are programmable, things are scalable, all of the same terms. Yet what's interesting is the network never really grew with the proliferation of cloud, or at least data center networking never grew with proliferation of cloud. And so my job here, specifically inside of VMware, is to help bring NSX into the cloud era, if you will. I think they have a great data center virtualization platform. We've built that out from a portfolio perspective, and we're starting to really address the needs of businesses that have gone multi-cloud. So it's kind of fun to be in that swing of things, and it's consistent with belief, which is you got to do things in software, and you got to do things at scale, and things that get developers excited.
Yeah. So, obviously VMware essentially kind of pioneered virtual networking back when, VMs were kind of evolving, VM admins
right.
and network admins were all trying to figure out how to network virtual machines. The world's kind of evolved past on-prem VMs. Where is this sort of software-defined concept going for networking? Where does it expand to?
Well, so it helps. You bring up a great point, right? VMware got into the networking business, believe it or not, 10 years ago, right? So for a company that's been around 20 years, 10 years ago they introduced the distributed switch instead of vSphere specifically for virtual applications. But what's happened in those last 9 years or 10 years, it's actually kind of interesting. There was the acquisition of Nicira. There was the focus on security through microsegmentation in the network when they launched NSX. They've bought a number of companies that really kind of focused on how do you scale and automate data center networking with a company called Arkin. They basically did network insights. They did integration with the automation suite here. So that was kind of that accounts for about 8-9 years of that networking vision and strategy. It was almost exclusive to the data center overlay, trying to figure out how do we basically operate the software-defined data center at scale, and get people on this networking train, if you will. And it's been pretty exciting. I think the company counts over 4,500 customers. It's $1.3 billion run rate. It's been super successful building in the data center. But what's next is what gets me excited, and that is as you get out of the data center and kind of into this multi-cloud world, into this multi-branch world. And that's where we're investing a significant amount of money in acquisitions, in product development, et cetera. We have the vision we're executing against is, or the mantra we're executing against is one that we call NSX Everywhere. And that's bringing software-defined networking to every platform and every application, regardless of where it runs or how it runs. So we've been making significant investments doing things with containers, with bare metal, with KVM, from a virtualization perspective, and then investing in technologies like NFV and SD-WAN and cloud to really give our customers that consistent fabric that runs from the data center to the branch to the cloud to the edge. And I think that's what's going to be the driving factor for SDN. I think SDN in the data center is a hard sell because there's no real compelling event. But as applications have moved across into this multi-cloud world, that's become the compelling reason why people are taking a look at how do they need to rethink their networking strategy.
And do you think then the future of networking is all software? And then follow up to that is, as somebody who, when I say you were kind of pioneered the concept of cloud and originally owned cloud.com, do you own cloudnetworking.com?
I do not own cloudnetworking.com. That's a good say. Maybe I can make sure that if that's available, I can get it. So I remember when I first started to kind of get the internal teams kind of rallied. You know, it was at the beginning of the phases where literally digital transformation was the overused term of all marketers. But you know, I came into VMware and that's all we heard about. And I looked at the team. I said, listen, with digital transformation, the network is dead. Full stop. And that got people's attention. I've since lightened that phrase, talking more about the fact that the network that got us here for the last 20 years, right? There's been incremental innovation that's happened in the network, but at the end of the day, it's still in a box. It's still defined for things like data center, campus, branch. It's still very, very rigid. That network idea is not the network of the next 20 years, right? It doesn't go away because there still is this fundamental need for that physical underlay. But at the end of the day, I think the next network, or the network of the future, is this software-defined overlay that sits on top of all of these environments and actually brings or exposes that innovation up and gives customers the control from end to end, right? So that's what I think is where SDN is going.
Yeah. So you mentioned the phrase or the approach, sort of NSX everywhere. There's kind of two flavors of NSX, right? There's NSX-V and there's NSX-T. Can you kind of walk us through the basics of what those are and kind of what's the differences between the two of them?
Yeah, no problem. So NSX-V, that's the original platform, right? So this is NSX for vSphere. And, you know, one of the ways I describe it to a lot of our customers is, you know, think about your mode 1 applications, right? To use the old Gartner phrase, or what is it Forrester said, the systems of record. This is the classic data center workload where VMware cut its teeth and grew for such a long time. People are running, you know, large machines with vSphere, with big systems of record type applications. They need network virtualization for it. NSX-V solves for that. NSX-T, in that same analogy, that becomes kind of the platform for the Mode 2 scale-out systems of engagement type workloads. This is the platform that is embedded in the Pivotal platform in PKS and PAS. This is the platform that we work with all the upstream Kubernetes distribution. This is the stuff, Brian, we're working on with Red Hat OpenShift, right? So this is networking for container apps, for bare metal apps, for KVM, and ultimately becomes the platform by which we are delivering NSX out into the cloud. So what we're doing with Amazon, or what we're doing with Azure, right? So when you think more distributed, highly scalable, scale-out type apps, their networking needs are fundamentally different than the classic data center apps. So NSX-T solves for that. We've combined the two under a consistent brand. We call it the NSX Data Center technology, right? So that's the platform, and customers are using a mix of these two capabilities. There's a large there's a large clothing retailer based out of, it's one of the big brands based out of Europe. They're, a great example is they're a long-standing user of NSXV in their classic data center stuff. But as they shifted to become more dynamic in the cloud, to create newer experiences and actually leverage the web not as a brochure, but actually as a way to connect better with their customers, they started to invest heavily in modern applications. And in that, they became huge adopters of the NSXT platform. And for them, it was because it was consistent feel, consistent experience. They knew that they could take the policies and the models they used in the classic data center or the rules and apply it to this new environment without having to learn or not only did they not have to learn a new language, but they also were able to do it in a way that for them, they wanted to be able to go leverage modern application architectures, but not have that detract from their policies and security and network operations that they had. And so NSXT kind of solves for that.
Well, so you bring up a great point there, because public clouds, I mean, you mentioned them, have their own internal networks. So help us understand how that interconnect happens and what role VMware plays in networking once a company gets outside their own data center.
Yeah, I mean, networks are everywhere, right? I mean, the only way that we actually can interoperate is by the fact that there is some level of transport, whether that transport is inside our data center, inside the wide area network, or inside the cloud. So taking a look at how do we leverage what's already there with regards to doing the connectivity and build our tools on top of it, or our platform on top of it. That's the way we think about the problem or technology. So say, for example, Microsoft Azure, as our customers are moving to the public cloud, what we do is we basically get an agent that would sit inside of a VNet. Similarly, in Amazon, it's an agent that sits inside of a VPC. And what it does is it enables you to have that consistent application policy or security policy. It enables you to have the ability to enable microsegmentation inside of a VNet or inside of a VPC, such that you're not just firewalling based on the virtual data center definition. You're actually able to segment and drive better controls over your apps by microsegmentation or microsegmenting the workloads and the data. So that is kind of how it works, and then it ties back into the main platform where literally from a user perspective, you're just writing your apps or you're deploying your apps, and it applies those rules and policies regardless of whether you're sitting in your data center, sitting across the WAN, or sitting in the cloud.
Okay, so it extends. So, like, for example, if I extend this out into AWS or Azure, for example, it goes all the way out to like those compute resources. It doesn't sort of stop at like an Azure firewall. I mean, you're gonna get visibility all the way to the VM, the compute resource, the container.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep, we get real-time visibility all the way in because of the fact that we're placing an agent inside. I know we have some competitive pressure from certain companies out there, and what they do is basically they'll get you into the cloud, but once you hit that VPC or VNet, the firewall, they're not going to go any deeper, right? They'll give you the visibility and the flows and the controls, but by getting the agent actually into the VPC, now we can actually go all the way down to the VM, the container, the application.
Nice. Okay. So help me out with connecting the dots even a little further then. Is this where the VMware Virtual Cloud Network comes into play? Like, what is the differences between that, and how does all of that work into all of this? And you guys remember when, I think it was probably about 6-7 years ago when VMware launched the software-defined data center. And I remember, we were at cloud.com at that point in time when they announced it, or we might have actually already made it into Citrix. Aaron, you were there. Yep.
And when they announced it, So when they announced it, what was crazy about SDDC was it was a vision for how data centers needed to operate like clouds. They took, in many ways, the messages that we had been using to drive the proliferation of cloud.com into or CloudStack into private cloud environments. And they basically coined a phrase and they painted a vision that brought together their compute platform, their network platform, and well, I guess in this case I'm now at VMware, but they brought together compute, network, and storage and did all of the orchestration and told it in a story that was significantly more powerful than, hey, buy CloudStack or buy OpenStack. And I think it changed the world because it created the differentiation. Now I know why I need to buy all of these things. So the same thing's kind of happening in the networking space. We need to be able to come up and have that reference design or vision that pulls together all of the areas where our customers' applications and data might reside and how you network it. So networking in the data center, networking in the WAN, networking through our telco partners, networking in the cloud, right? All of these things stitch together to create what our customers are going through on a daily basis, right? I think they say that 50% of enterprise applications are running in the cloud. Even crazier is the fact that 100% of new innovation is happening in the cloud, right, for enterprises. So the applications and workloads have moved out, but the network stopped at the data center edge. This is about how do we create that end-to-end fabric with built-in security delivered in software that customers can get behind. Otherwise, we just keep talking about NSX as a router replacement capability or something along those lines. So this is about up-leveling the message and the vision, continuing to execute on the roadmap and strategy that we have, but painting it in a way that our, the market and our customers understand how all of these pieces are going to fit together in one common uniformed experience.
Yeah, and all these environments. I mean, when SDDC sort of came out, everything was very centered around VMware VMs. The things you're doing now, that's not necessarily the center. It's not necessarily a mandate. You guys are you given the freedom then to? I mean, it seems like you're given the freedom to go work with whatever partner you need to, whether it's a AWS or Azure, or, you mentioned like working with Red Hat, I'm sure working with a lot of others.
Yeah.
Like VMware has that freedom within the whole Dell family to go do that and grow the NSX business.
Absolutely. I mean, if all we do is networking for vSphere, it's a huge market, but that doesn't solve what customers need us to go do, right? And so, that's our opportunity in front of us. We definitely cut our teeth with regards to networking for vSphere, but there's a whole new world out there where there hasn't been a lot of innovation in networking, and that's our opportunity to grow and go make it big. And that's driven, to your point, Brian, that's driven a lot of those relationships that we're able to go foster with, Red Hat, whether it's on OpenShift, or even the fact that we're supporting KVM, right? That's one working with the open source community, or the work that we're doing, of course, with Azure and Amazon. But we've also got IBM and a number of other large clouds out there. And I think the funny thing is a lot of people look at the competition, especially around networking, as it relates to VMware versus Cisco. And candidly, it's more of a VMware and Cisco. Right, there's a lot of environments where we bring or expose a lot of the innovation that Cisco is doing, and as such, there are reference designs. There's actually Cisco-validated designs that include the NSX platform in how they go to market. So, there's probably a little bit more hostile co-opetition there, but it's still co-opetition. So it's kind of fun to have the opportunity to work across all of those other things. I think, if it was just let's build networking for VMware, I don't think I'd be here.
Yeah. It makes sense. The world's expanded. It's interesting how far it's come in 5 or 6 years. That's cool.
Yeah. It is kind of crazy to think how the world's changed in the last 5-6 years, right?
Yeah. So who is, if you had to put a name on it, obviously you guys you're out talking to people, you're in meetings with customers and so forth. Like, who is the virtual cloud network admin? Is that a VM admin? Is it a container admin? Is it the SRE team? Yeah. Is it like who identifies around this sort of expanded space?
Yeah. So the personas, that's an interesting one. And when I look at my customer base, just being candid, I think it comes from VMware's legacy. I would argue 80, maybe more % of my customer persona is the data center virtualization admin, right? The infrastructure admin that's been responsible for really focusing in on the apps and stuff. That landscape is changing. In the case of containers, for example, developers play an extremely important role in how we go to market and how we engage. But the thing is, they don't care about NSX, they don't care about networking, they just care about their tools. So the buyer or the influencer actually will come through our partnerships with companies like Pivotal or Red Hat. For the virtual cloud network, as that expands, we actually see a couple of areas where we take shape inside of an enterprise. So, for example, when we launched it, we actually had the Chief Information Security Officer from W.L. Gore talking about how this impacts his business. He's actually W.L. Gore. They use NSX in the data center. They use SD-WAN to connect to the cloud. They use I think they're using Amazon from a public cloud perspective. He's the one who drove the need for the virtual cloud network because of the fact that he wanted a common security thread between the data center to cloud, and he viewed that security could be optimized by taking a look at it via the network. So there's one example, which isn't your typical networking guy or data center administrator. We also have this new emerging group of cloud admins, the guys who are now responsible for infrastructure that is running on-prem and in the public cloud, and they are more software defined by definition. But this is an emerging group that seems to be sitting inside of IT in some of these really large organizations. So when we attach ourselves to a cloud or a cloud infrastructure admin, they actually are the ones who drive our success and our implementation as we get into the customer space. We actually had a great story at VMworld last year. Centene, they're like the biggest company nobody's ever heard of. They went from Fortune 400 to Fortune 50 to Fortune 19 in just a matter of 3 or 4 years. And they did it through acquisition. They just kept basically pulling all of these companies together. And they're an insurance. So they focused on the cloud to unify all of these different IT environments. It was a initial cloud admin that picked up the NSX platform and started to build it out. Today, he's actually the vice president of infrastructure for Centene. His career took off. Just because of the fact that he went away from the traditional constructs of roles that happen in classic enterprise, and he built a small team. I think there's only 5 of them that was focused on this emerging cloud infrastructure, and now he's running the full organization as the companies make that shift. So those are the kind of changes that we see from the personas of where we engage. We still see huge opportunity to engage with the networking admin. We usually start there more from the SD-WAN perspective because that's a real problem they're trying to solve today versus worrying about a lot of the networking in the cloud. So there's different entry points for how we engage with our customers.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And Aaron, it's something we always get feedback from people is like, what should I go focus on next? What should I go learn? And I think what Peder essentially highlights is focus on making the business better first and foremost. And then the tools will sort of follow behind. And the nice thing is, no matter where you're starting from today, you have an opportunity to sort of become more relevant if you're willing to put the time in.
Yep, exactly.
It's funny. When I first started, I come from that classic model of you can't tell people too much, and you got to really kind of make it systematic or programmatic to how they can engage with you. And the old mode of selling this stuff was, virtualize everything, virtualize all your networking. Here's NSX, do it all. And it was kind of like the original cloud pitches that you saw. Everybody goes, just go to the cloud. And people built these private clouds without understanding, why did I build it? So from a marketing perspective and from a sales enablement perspective, I think it's really important for us to not just go sell somebody on the concept of SDN. We got to sell them, capabilities that solve some key problems. So with that, we identified, I think the way I talk through it is it's four or five kind of key insertion points that customers should be thinking about. First off, the easiest is how do you leverage security in the network security for your infrastructure, especially as you're getting more cloudy across your business. This is where microsegmentation sets in. From there, we can move into scale. So data center consolidation, bringing all of these platforms together. You want to automate everything, and you can start that automation in the network. So the network overlay for automation becomes your next step. The third step is going multi-cloud. Get out of the data center. How are you dealing with your branch? How are you dealing with the cloud? This is how you start driving that consistency. And then the fourth one that we talk to is literally how do you embed these capabilities, this policy, this visibility into your next gen applications. And so that's what we're doing with regards to the work of with Pivotal and Kubernetes. All of that kind of frames how you move up the ladder of complexity. And we find that customers, as they self-identify where to plug in, where their project is, they start small and then they grow, and they ultimately they fill out all four of those pillars as they scale.
Yeah, makes great sense. That's fantastic. So we're kind of up against our time here. We're going to ask you one final question. Have you ever seen Dom Delfino and the singer Pitbull in the same room at the same time?
No. I actually, I'm seriously thinking that they are the same person. We were at Dell Tech World. Pitbull was at Dell Tech World. Dom was at Dell Tech World. They were not in the same room ever.
Yep.
As much as we tried. So it's kind of funny to have such royalty on the team.
So for those that don't know, take a look in the show notes and click on the link. Dom's on the team, and you can check out for yourself and come to your own conclusions as to which one's Dom and which one's Pitbull.
I think the only thing that kind of saves Dom is Dom's about 5-6 inches taller than Pitbull. Otherwise, they're spitting image.
Yeah, absolutely. So Peter, where can everyone find out more about you, about the team, about the products, and kind of learn more from here? So
we're actually launching a big, broad web campaign, webcast, for the Virtual Cloud Network globally. So they'll start rolling out region-wide, and that's all going to be available through VMware.com. It'll have the whole vision and strategy around what we're doing around Virtual Cloud Network, as well as go into the deep details of product. Coming to a city near you, we're also going to make sure we're out there working with customers and regions to be able to touch the tech, get in and actually see the stuff in action, and get your hands on the capability. So that's always available. Myself, I'm still at Ulander on Twitter. I probably need to get a little more active on that. I kind of slowed down there for a while, but that's what happens as you get older, I guess.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So on behalf of Brian and myself, Peter, thank you very much for your time. And thank you, everyone, for listening this week. And we will talk to everyone next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more podcasts, show notes, and everything social media. And visit acloud.guru for all your cloud training needs.